Welcome. Today we are going to be talking about the serpentine cults of Southern Europe, specifically the Asclepian cult, right? The healing god of the Greeks, right? But we're also going to look into where it came from, the lineage of the snake serpentine deity in the ancient world, what it became to, and then how the reign of the serpent cults ended. Right? And it's going to end in a rather interesting and unique way where it is confronted full force by Christianity. This is a place where myth is going to meet history. And for that reason, I've chosen to do a presentation on it today. Naturally, if there wasn't some very interesting things going on here, I wouldn't be talking about it. So we are going to have snakes, we are going to have serpents, we're going to have deities, we're going to have miracles, and we're going to have dragons, and of course dragon slayers, and find that place where the myth meets the history, where fact meets fiction. Now, I'm a Westerner. Most of the people watching this are going to be Westerners. Right? We, in general, most places, right, have a healthy fear of snakes / serpents, right? And it's a perfectly logical fear. This is a creature that if it bites you, right, in our time today, if it bites me, at the minimum, I'm going to the hospital having a bad day and a big, big medical bill, right? In ancient times, something like an adder bites you, a viper, a cobra, that's game over, all right? Even something like the venomous snake like the adder, let's just forget about the cobra. An adder bites you, that's game over. Sayonara, done, right? Even in modern times, it's a big deal, right? I used to work at a place where there were rattlesnakes, timber rattlesnakes, right? Somebody got bit at one, worked at a park, right? In the forest, somebody got bit by one. We had an hour to get them to the we had 45 minutes. 45 minutes is how quickly that venom could kill someone. And the nearest hospital was 1 hour away. All right? So, to give you an idea, this is still a thing in the modern era, right? We have every reason to be afraid of these things, and we should be. But not everyone was so afraid of them or saw them in necessarily the worst possible way. And we'll get into why. Right? We're all very familiar with the Abrahamic religion, right? The story in Genesis of the devil, the serpent, right? Guising himself as a serpent to deceive Eve, and thus Eve deceives Adam through this lie, and then the downfall of humankind. The serpent is literally demonized in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, right? From this origin story in Genesis. All right, and we're going to see that come into play, believe it or not, in this video here towards the end, because Christians are going to be encountering these serpentine cults. We look at the very beginnings of this, and in terms of the world of Southern Europe. Right, I want to make clear, the Middle East is not my speciality, right? The ancient world, the super, like Sumer, Babylon, Persia, this is not my speciality, even Egypt, right? But there are serpentine deities there, in all the way far as back as Sumer. At the very beginning, we have serpentine deities, okay? We first see it in Southern Europe through the Minoans, right? When we look at the Minoans, we have all these famous artifacts, and one of them is of a snake woman. And will pop up on the screen here. Now, how do we interpret this image or idol? The answer is we don't, okay? Any idea you have here as an explanation is a plausible one because there is no way to know, unfortunately. But we can make some guesses, right? So when we look at Minoan art, and I'll just pop them up on the screen here, what do we see an abundance of? Well, it's animals, right? From many tiny figurines of dolphins all the way to elaborate frescoes, right? So we see a dolphin, an octopus, a griffin, and of course, right, the myth of the Minotaur, right? This half bull, half human monstrosity. Suffice to say, the Minoans had an incredible reverence, right, for nature, for animals. We don't know if the Minoans, right, were an animistic religion, but we do know that these people had a fascination with them, right? They're animal lovers. There's great importance to them. So when we look back at this image of the snake woman, what can we say about her? Well, she's clearly an important figure, right? It's highly unlikely it's a queen, but it's possible. The most likely interpretation is this is either a goddess or a priestess of said goddess, right? But if the snake represents danger, right, in nature, as it does to everyone, all of us, right, and she's triumphantly holding these snakes, what's that saying? It's saying she has conquered nature, right? She has harnessed it. It is hers now. So harnessing nature, what are we meaning by that? We're meaning probably as in magic or medicine, the ability to make potions, right? I have harnessed the power of poison or medicine or pharmaceuticals, right? Pharmaca. We're going to see this later on, and as we go through this video, it's the idea of snakes having healing powers, right? And we see, we're all familiar with the Wild West guy peddling his snake oil and the caravan, all that thing. This is not a new idea. And we're going to see that throughout this video. But we have some decent ideas already, right? From this image. But there's one problem here. Can anybody else, let's figure out what's unique about this image that I haven't talked about yet. Her breasts are exposed, right? She's wearing a dress that is literally designed to expose her bare breasts, which would indicate a fertility god, right? So, goddess of nature, healing, magic, medicine, fertility, who knows, right? That's why it's so confusing. Perhaps this deity represents all of them, right? But what we could say here in this image is that snakes aren't necessarily seen in a negative way. The next Grecian civilization is the Mycenaeans, right? Who would conquer the Minoans and their home island of Crete in around 1400 BC. Not that far back, 1450 BC. And they also, through their artwork, had a fondness for serpents. Here we have these figurines of snakes you can see as guardians guarding the treasure. The idea of the serpent as a guardian is going to be present in what we consider ancient Greece, as well as in the myth of Cadmus, right? And the serpent that guards the sacred spring of Ares. The punishment, interestingly, for Cadmus killing that serpent was that Ares turned him into a serpent himself, and then he was supposed to guard the sacred spring, right? Kind of like like the Tim Allen Santa Claus movie, but with serpents. The other interesting image we see from the Mycenaeans is this one here. Does it look familiar? It's another bare-breasted goddess with wolves at her side, and above her head are two serpents. So it's pretty darn likely, I think, that this Minoan deity is being worshipped by the Mycenaeans as well. It's going to continue onward, right? And certainly this is also in that same fertility nature type role. But another example would be Isis, right? The Egyptian goddess, right? Who we can see in this image here, also holding snakes outstretched. This idea, I have conquered nature, right? And the Minoans definitely had a knowledge of this Egyptian deity. We can't say if Isis influenced them or they influenced Isis, right? We don't know that, but this is not just a coincidence, right? I mean, people can say it's a coincidence, etc. We don't have the evidence to say that these are all linked. But the odds of all of them, developing their own exact kind of replica of the same goddess, and they're all neighbors and they're all talking to each other, the odds of that are exceptionally slim, right? They're influencing each other. This is connected. Isis is going to gain her affiliation for Serpent from legend, in that she created a snake that bit and poisoned Ra, and then would cure him, but only if Ra told her his secret name, right? In Egypt, you don't want to give somebody a secret name, because then you hold power over them, right? I can curse you now, though, that I know your real name, right? You couldn't do that if you went by an alias, and so most people in ancient Egypt later on did go by an alias, all right? So they couldn't be actually cursed. So this is poison, right? In that story, poison, magic, healing, right? So she's going to be seen as a god of magic. But I want you to see some other depictions here of Isis. We all know of the Greek myths of the snake monster, the snake woman monster, Medusa, Lamia, the Echidna, and we have Egyptian images of Isis that match that description, right? And that's going to come up later, because the cult of Isis is going to infiltrate Greece and Rome in the 4th century BC, and does become a minor cult there up until its elimination by Christianity. And indeed, these temples of Isis supposedly held snakes. We're not done here. Another snake goddess, Antignia, was present in Italy, a goddess of witchcraft and healing. In Asia Minor, what we call Turkey today, was a serpent goddess of the Scythians, right? Most in English you'd say Scythian. In the Greek it was Scythian. That Hesiod is actually going to identify as Echidna. All right, so Hesiod's going to see these images, the nose of this snake goddess of the Scythians, and he's going to identify that is Echidna, right? That is the Titan, the snake woman Titan monstrosity of Greek religion and mythology. And indeed, the Greek artwork of the Gorgon Medusa, for example, is going to be very popular in Asia Minor, thanks to her resemblance to the actual goddess. Suffice to say, there are quite a few serpent cults in the Greco-Roman world, in southern Europe. The most famous of which is going to be Asclepius. All right? So in ancient Greece, Asclepius is going to be known as the founder of medicine, right? We know Hippocrates as the founder of modern medicine in our world, right? But to the Greeks, before Hippocrates, there was Asclepius, right? And that is the correct pronunciation, Asclepius, right? I've been calling him Asclepius for the longest time. Asclepius is the correct pronunciation. And Asclepius is going to be the true founder of medicine in the Greek world, and is going to be deified, worshipped as a god. And he's got a few different origin stories, which we'll look at here. But suffice to say, what's the theme here of these snake gods, deities? Well, they're not evil, right? It's nature, it's magic, it's healing, it's medicine, it's those things. Those are non-evil things, all right? So the serpent is being interpreted as a good thing, right? Now, people in ancient times are definitely wary of serpents. Don't get me wrong, right? But in these cultures, right, they have a dual purpose that goes both ways. There's fear and deification of them as well. One of the origin stories we have by Zenobius of Asclepius was taught by medicine by the centaur Chiron. Athena gave him the blood that flowed from the Gorgon's veins, and with it he healed many people. He used the blood from the veins on the left side to kill people, and that from the veins on the right side to cure them. It is said that he even restored dead people to life this way. In order to prevent mortals from thinking Asclepius was a god, Zeus killed him with a thunderbolt. Celsus later gives us a more rational explanation. The Greeks have made rather greater medical advances than many other peoples. Even among the Greeks, however, medicine is just a few generations old and does not go back to the origins of the race. Asclepius is famous as the earliest exponent of the art. Medicine was still rudimentary and crude in his time, and he came to be reckoned as one of the gods simply because he developed it in a more sophisticated way. Aristophanes says, snakes are sacred to Asclepius. It is natural that Asclepius should have them as his attendants, since snakes slough off their old skin, they always look young. And likewise, the god makes sick people look young when he casts away their illnesses like a snake skin. Here's an interesting entrance, right? The Sicyonians say that the god Asclepius was carried to them from Epidaurus on a carriage drawn by 2 mules, that he was in the likeness of a serpent. And so those are his serpents. Supposedly some of his origin stories here. He's got a lot of them, and those are some ancient authors, quote, writers talking about his connection to the serpent. All right, so there aren't a ton of reference to serpents out there, but they're there. But the image, right, of him and the snake are inseparable, because, you know, religion, medicine, they're inseparable in the ancient world. The Greeks are going to build healing temples devoted to Asclepius. So far, over 700 of them have been discovered. All right? This is the ancient version of a hospital. Okay? The healing temples of Asclepius. I am having heart problems. My leg is broken. I have a headache that won't go away. I've been pregnant for 3 years. What do I do? Literally, that's one of the cases that this woman's been pregnant for 3 years and goes to them for help. Right? And of course, he solves everything. But, yeah, so you get the idea here. There's a lot of association with these serpents, and they are crawling all over the temples, right? It's the sign of Asclepius. They're crawling all over the temples. You can see his staff here. It is the symbol of Asclepius. His staff, that is the symbol, right? With the serpent on there, the one serpent on there. It is not the symbol of modern medicine. They actually got it wrong and used either, I believe it's Hermes staff on accident, right? This is the modern medical logos use the 2, right? 1 snake for Asclepius. They got it wrong. Anyway, too bad, so sad. But yeah, so far over 700 of these hospitals in the ancient world. All right, so let's look at a few sources here describing these temples. Get an idea of what's going on inside this place. The sacred grove of Asclepius is surrounded on all sides by boundary marks. No death or birth takes place within the enclosure. All the offerings, whether the offer be of the Epidaurians themselves or a stranger, are entirely consumed within the bounds. The image of Asclepius is in size half as big as Zeus Olympus at Athens and is made of ivory and gold. The god is sitting on a seat grasping a staff. In the other hand, he is holding above the head of a serpent. So I guess he's like petting it. There's also a figure of a dog lying by his side. Over against the temple is the place where suppliants of the god sleep. This is going to be very important, sleep is, in dreams for the healing that's going to take place here. Within the enclosure stood slabs. In my time 6 remain, but of old there were more. On them are inscribed the names of both the men and women who have been healed by Asclepius, the disease also from which each suffered, and the means of the cure. The dialect is Doric. Apart from the others is an old slab which declares that Hippolytus dedicated 20 horses to the god. The serpents, including a peculiar kind of yellowish color, are considered sacred to Asclepius and are tame with men. All right, here's an image of the Asclepian snake. It's a real snake. It's in Europe and was used at these temples everywhere. All right. But the power of dreams is going to be exceptionally important to the healing process of the Asclepian cult, right? You have your problems, you go in there, oh, I've got a massive migraine that I've had for 40 years or whatever ridiculous thing. You go in there and you dream, you sleep overnight there. In your dream, the deity would appear to you and assist you. Often you would have a dream that you were healed, and then you'd wake up the next morning healed, right? You'd have a dream how you were healed, etc., and then it would be true. You wake up the next morning and find out that had happened, right? So it's through the power of dreams that Asclepius would come to patients and heal them. Some of these medical miracles we'll go into because they kept track of these. They wrote it on reliefs and inscriptions of some of their achievements. A 3-year pregnancy. Ithamonica of Pallene came to the temple about having children. She slept in the shrine and had a vision, power of dreams. It seemed that she asked the god to allow her to conceive a child, and Asclepius said that she would be pregnant and that he would grant her anything else she asked for. She said that there was nothing more she needed. She became pregnant and carried the child in her belly for 3 years, and eventually came back to entreat the god about giving birth. She slept in the shrine and had a vision. It seemed like the god had asked her whether everything had not happened that she had asked for and whether she was pregnant. He said that she had not asked anything about giving birth, even though he had asked her whether there was anything else she needed and had said that he would grant it. But he said that since she had come now to supplicate him about giving birth, he would be happy to make that happen for her. She then hurried out of the inner sanctum, and as soon as she was outside the shrine, she gave birth to a daughter. Boy, that was dumb. She wanted to ask the god to make her pregnant, but she didn't ask to give birth, so therefore she stayed pregnant for 3 years. All right, then. Next one. A woman had a worm inside her, and the best doctors had given up hope of curing her. So she came to Epidaurus and begged Asclepius to free her from the parasite. The god was not present, but the temple attendants laid the woman down where the god was accustomed to heal suppliants. She lay quietly, as she had been instructed. The god's ministers began the procedure necessary for the cure. They took her head off her neck, and then one of them inserted his hand into her body and extracted the worm, a big brute of a thing. But they could not fit her head back on correctly the way it had been before. The god arrived and was angry with them for trying to do something that was beyond their capability. Then he himself, with his irresistible divine power, fitted her head back on her body and restored her to health. That's Alien. History of animals. A dog cured a boy from Aegina. He had a growth on his neck. When he came to the god Asclepius, a dog took care of him with its tongue and made him well. All right, well, a man from Torone. This man slept in the shrine and had a dream. It seemed to him that the god split open his chest with a knife and took out the leeches, and then put the leeches in his hands and stitched his chest closed. In the morning he left the temple cured, with the creatures in his hands. He had been tricked by his stepmother to drink them down in a potion she had thrown them into. It's from another Epidaurus inscription. Right, so we're not seeing a lot of testament here of medical wisdom, but more like miraculous miracles, that sort of thing that they've attested to the god Asclepius, right? Bizarre things, but we see the power of dreams, right? They're going to sleep, they're having a dream of something happening, they're waking up and they're healed, right? It is actually common for some of these stories of Asclepian healing temples to describe a snake licking them, right, and healing them that way through the licks, right? Same for a dog. The dog would lick them, that would help heal them. Dogs were also important to Asclepius, but not at the level that the serpent was. Here we can actually see an image of a patient being healed at an Asclepian. That's what the hospitals were called, the healing temples were called. He's actually being bitten by that serpent, and it is healing them, right? Or the serpent sucking the sickness out of him. However you'd like to interpret that relief. The serpents there, right? So we talked about the Asclepian snake, right? So let's think about that. They're non-venomous rat snakes, right? They're perfect for this, right? But they're about 7 feet long, right? They're about 2 meters in length. It's one of the largest snakes in Europe. Why did they do that? Why did they get one of the largest snakes in Europe? They want something large to represent their deity, right? To be an aid to the deity. The bigger the better. The bigger the more impressive, etc. Why do these statues of the gods have to be, gigantic, right? Because of their importance. Okay, so the size did matter. I want to look at this but I want to look at this passage here of the healing temple of Asclepius in Alexandria, referenced here by Alan. Egyptian histories relate that in the time of Ptolemy Philadelphus, there were brought from Ethiopia to Alexandria 2 live dracones, and that one of them was 14 cubits long, the other 13, and at the time of Ptolemy Euergetes, 3 were bought. One was 9 cubits long, the second 7, and the third snake 1 cubit less, so 6 cubits. And the Egyptians assert that they were tended with great care in the temple of Asclepius. Right? That's big. 20 cubits? That's like 20 feet. Right? 14 cubits. It's about 20 feet, right? These are big creatures, right? Big snakes. Now, the term draconis, right? We mentioned that in there. The term draconis, in the Greek world, that means dragon. Draconis means dragon, all right? And in ancient Greece, this is most likely going to be referred to as a large constricting serpent, right? But what the 14 cubits is talking about, right, is a 20-foot long serpent that they are going down to Ethiopia, right? And what they mean by Ethiopia is the land of black people is what they're talking about. That's what they mean when they see Ethiopia, the land of black people, right? So sub-Sahara Africa, whatever you want, whatever the cutoff is, that's what they're talking about, right? And so they have acquired a 20-foot snake, according to them, a draconis, from Ethiopia and brought it back and stationed it in Alexandria. That seems unbelievable, doesn't it? Well, this is a depiction here of Apollo slaying the legendary draconis named Python. Looks like a python, doesn't it? Yes, it does, right? That's because pythons, the animal, were named after the depiction of the serpent that Apollo slayed. Now, let's wonder, how did Greeks come up with this idea, right? How did Greeks come up with the idea of a giant python, all these things like that, a draconis, right? That looks exactly like an actual python. It almost makes you wonder if an ancient healing temple really did procure an actual 20-foot snake from Ethiopia. But if only, of course, to prove this point, if only there was a 20-foot python in Africa. Oh, wait, there is. Okay? Oxford University got this wrong. All right? So, the rock python. All right? So, a picture of it here. This is the largest, and they're one of the largest snakes, serpents in the world. They're about 6 meters or 20 feet in length, sometimes a little over. So, if the Romans are going around fetching crocodiles, lions, hyenas from Africa, then the Greeks and the Romans are definitely getting a python for their religious festivities, right? If they can go grab lions, crocodiles, hyenas, to throw them at leopards, to put them in the arena for entertainment, then what are they going to do for something far more important like religion? But how do we know the Romans knew of the rock python? I feel like there's not enough evidence here. Oh wait, there is. It's a Roman mosaic of a rock python. All right, so it did make it there. It did make it there, the mosaic in Rome. So clearly they know about them. All right. So in short, at least we know as a fact that one of these healing temples of Asclepius, has an actual draconis there, or dragon there, in the form of a 20-foot python. All right? I wonder how the Christians are going to feel about this. Something tells me they're not going to be happy about people worshiping a dragon. All right? Because in that time, dragon literally meant that, right? What we're describing here in the Greek world. But before we get to that, before we get to this, the Christians encountering dragons, actual dragons, we're going to have to take a quick deviation to talk about something just as bizarre, and that is going to be a false prophet. All right, we see them in false prophets in Christianity. All that nonsense happens every now and then. The Greek religion was no different. And there is going to be a false prophet claiming to be, let's say, a Messiah, right? Who is not one. So, a quack named Alexander, this false prophet, is going to play quite the trick, according to Lucian, who, or we pronounce it also Lucian. Lucian is going to have describe his document the reign or the deception of Alexander. So the false prophet Alexander is going to, what he's going to do, he's going to go into the temple of Asclepius. He's going to bury there in the ground a goose egg, right, with a tiny little snake in it. And he is going to tell a large crowd of people later that, hey, there is a reincarnation, a second coming of the god, the healing god Asclepius is coming. Come with me to the temple. I will show you. Assemble here. He digs up that goose egg with a snake in it. He opens it. Lo and behold, the new god is born. This excites people, and especially the dim-witted. And he is going to put on a charade that is going to be legendary. He is going to make a puppet of a large serpent that he is going to use to speak to them with. It's going to be more or less a puppet show, a ventriloquist act. And folks are going to come far and wide to see this serpent, which he has named Glycon, this false prophet. And he's going to give them advice. He's going to, this puppet show is going to give advice, prophecies, etc., healing wisdom, how to protect themselves from the plague that is coming during the plague of Antonine. This is all taking place in the 2nd century, right? Alexander lived from about 105 to 170 AD. And it's going to spread all over Europe, the popularity of this cult. This image was actually found. This icon of Glycon was found in Romania, right? And they actually have a tablet of protection from the Antonine Plague. It is this one was found in the River Thames, right, all the way in London, right? So the spread of this heresy, right, this false prophet is going to be immense, and it's not going to go away. And for another 100 years after his death, right, he dies in 170, it's still around. There are Roman coins in the 3rd century, in the 200s, that are being coined and printed, right, minted. And so the popularity of this cult is going to continue, and probably until it is eliminated by Christianity itself. So we have not just Asclepius, right? We have many serpent cults in Europe, Southern Europe. We have, of course, Asclepius, the most popular. We have Alexander, the spin-off false prophet. We have Isis, right, of Egyptian lore. Here's some, images of her. She's a snake woman in a lot of these depictions, right? That snakes or serpents are certainly running around her temples, right? We have the snake goddess in Asia Minor, we call Turkey, right? That looks like an echidna or a Medusa, right? Who is also going to be worshipped during this time. What on earth are the Christians going to think about this? We're going to get into that now. So we talked about in Asia Minor how the snake goddess is being worshipped, right? That creepy, what they called echidna, right? The similarities that the Greeks believed they had, or to Medusa. Well, in the Christian world, here in the Christian writings, we have the Acts of Philip. This is Apocrypha, right? Written in the mid to late 4th century AD. Jesus is going to send Philip, Bartholomew, and Miriam on a mission to a city of the snake. It's called the City of the Snake, or Hierapolis, is the real name of the place, but they call it Ophior Hymnos, which signifies the road of snakes. And they say, for the people of that city worship the mother of the snakes, the echidna. Whenever you enter that city, if there is nothing female about your form, the snakes will see that you have nothing to do with the form of Eve. For the form of Eve is a woman, and Eve is of the same form. This was but the form of Adam is a man, and you know that a hatred of Eve arose for Adam from the beginning. This was the beginning of the snake's war with man. The snake formed a friendship with women, and Adam was deceived by his wife Eve, etc., right? So Christ, in this Apocrypha, it's a story, right, wants Philip to go and convert the people of Hierapolis, right, of the land of the snake. And they're going to describe, right, on this journey, they're going to describe meeting a talking leopard that's going to give them advice and be their guide, right? They're going to describe big 100-foot-long snakes, dragons, dracones along this. While Philip, right, is trying to make to convert the city of Hierapolis, we're going to get a few interesting nuggets of what they describe the religious practice of this place being. They said that entering the city, the apostles found near the gate an empty clinic in which no healer was based. Right? They're placing all of that upon the prayers to the echidna, right? The snake goddess. This city has the following custom. They used to take all the children that were born to the sanctuary and cast them before the echidna. She would lick them with her tongue, and it was by this sign that they became partners of the snakes. But during Philip's stay in the city, the people were baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. They stopped associating with the echidna and all turned to the apostles. The snakes would not bite those who were baptized because of the sign of the cross. Abandon your temporal way of life. Put off your base mind's bestial nature. Flee the bitter dragon and its desires. Cast away the tools and weapons of the man-slaying snake. Renounce the unclean and accursed wickedness of idols, which are the enemy's territory and dark prison. So Apostle Philip is chastising the people of Hierapolis. They are going to capture him. They are going to torture him. They're not happy about this. And the priestess there is going to say, punish these mages, strangers, corrupters, and deceivers of men for us. Since they arrived and our city has been filled with evil deeds. They even killed the snakes, the sons of our goddess. They have closed down the sanctuary and its altar is abandoned. We have found no offerings of wine for the echidna to drink and to go to sleep. If you wish to know that they are indeed mages, look, see how they wish to bewitch us, saying, live a life of chastity and dignity, believing in God. See how they got into the city. See how they did this without the dragons blinding them. How the dragons did not drink their blood, and how the dragons themselves that guard our city against all strangers were cast down by these men. And anyway, they're all going to die. Philip is going to be killed, right? Why is Philip going to be killed? They're going there, they're stepping on snakes, they're crushing them, they're saying offensive things about their religion and stuff they don't understand about how it's evil and about Eve and all this stuff, and they're like, what is going on? And supposedly Philip's going to be martyred there trying to convert these people, and a lot of them are converted, right? But something was going on in Hierapolis, right? This is not just fiction here, written about this in Christian fiction. Right? Now, do they have snakes 100 feet long? Probably not, right? Did they meet a talking leopard? Probably not. It would be fun, but probably not. Right? This is, it's an example of an embellishment, right? But we have the snake goddess there in Asia Minor. So this episode, this story, is probably based on something real, right? Describing the snake, the cult of the snake goddess in Hierapolis. We have another example, another surprising example, this one from Rome. This Christian tale of the conversion of Rome was written in 400 to 500 AD, and is Saint Sylvester converting the Romans, and he describes the situation there and how the Romans are worshiping a dragon. In the Acts of Sylvester. This is Apocrypha again. There was once a monstrous dragon, or Draco, in the Tarpeian Rock, on which the capital is located. Once a month, mages, together with profane virgins, they're talking about priests and priestesses, used to descend down 365 steps to this dragon, as if to hell, with sacrifices and proprietary offerings, tidbits of which could be given to the dragon as large as it was. The dragon suddenly unexpectedly came up, and although it did not come out of its hole, nonetheless it corrupted the air about it with its breath. As a result of this came the death of people, and in great measure. All right, so there's a plague, and the Sylvester is blaming the dragon for it. There's disease. They're saying, hey, it's your dragon. Your dragon, your serpent is the cause of everybody dying. It's because you're worshiping this false idol. That's why it's happening. Sylvester says, most holy Emperor Ever August, your Roman people is continuously imperiled by the breath of a dragon. For sacred virgins in the temple of Vesta maintain the custom of descending to him every day of the calends and serving cakes of wheat to him. This is common. Offerings to a deity would be honey cakes or wheat, all right? So that's typically what they were feeding these creatures, right? There is another account of the same incident. Deep inside its lair, a fire-breathing dragon that was lurking in a secret cave of a crypt in Rome and terrorizing the unfortunate people in a savage fashion, corrupting the air with its venomous jaws and the pestilential blasts of its breath. There are other accounts of this practice. This is Tertullian in 207, sometime between 207 and 400 AD, this is written. For at Rome, the women that deal with that apparently inextinguishable fire intend the omens of their own punishment, and that dragon too are appointed on the basis of virginity. I hear that those who are called the virgins of Vesta carry meals for a dragon every 5 years. However, this dragon either does not exist, or if it does exist, is the devil himself, that former enemy temper of the human race. Yet they worship it, who now trembles weakly before the name of Christ and confesses all its deeds. This is Propertius, right? 300, around 300 AD. Lanavium has long been protected by an ancient dragon. It is well worth the time to visit this curious place, for a sacred descent falls away sharply into a blind cavern. This is the route traveled by virgins' tributes for a ravenous serpent when it demands its annual feed and sends its hissings twisting up from the depths of the earth. The girls sent down for such rites grow pale as their gentle hands are nibbled by the snake's mouth. It snatches up the tidbits proffered by the virgins. Even the baskets shudder in the virgins' hands. If they have been chased, they return to hug their parents, and the farmers cry, "The year will be fertile." And Lavinium, a grove, largely and densely wooded, is held sacred, and is a nearby temple of Hera of the Argolid. In the grove is a great deep hole, and that is the lair of a dragon. On appointed days, sacred virgins enter the grove with barley cakes in their hands and blindfolds over their eyes. A divine breath draws them directly to the lair of the dragon, and they advance slowly and gently without tripping, just as if they were seeing with their eyes covered. If they are virgins, the dragon accepts their food as sacrifice and suitable for an animal dear to God. But if they are not virgins, then their food is left untasted, because the dragon has foreknowledge of their corruption and divines it. So, this is an odd thing, right? I heard somebody mention, someone else who's talked about this source says it was impossible. Why was it impossible? Because snakes don't live in caves. Okay, well, some do. The rock python, for example, can live in a cave. It likes to live underground. It has a burrow. It goes there. It would sleep there, right? So it living in a crevice, a hole, a cave, that kind of thing is normal, right? This practice seems to have occurred in some way or form. There's some coins. There's a picture of some coins here minted between 54 AD and 60 AD, right? Long before the Christians are telling tales of this, these coin minted seem to show the actual practice that these early Christians are describing. Here, the blindfolded priestess or virgin delivering the food offering to the serpent or dragon itself. So the dragons these early Christian writers are talking about were real, right? They are simply describing the old snake cults that once existed and the conversion of them. The one in Rome, right? We have evidence for the coins that this was a real practice by the Romans, right? We don't know if this is to Isis, Egyptian goddess Isis. We don't know if this was to Asclepius, right? But suffice to say, they're making offerings to a serpent, or rather, possibly in another way, feeding the serpent, right? When we look at Hierapolis, right, in Asia Minor, the talk of worshiping of a snake woman, right? And a city of snakes, where all these snakes are worshipped. This is likely a real thing, right? The snake goddess was present there, right? So we have real instances of Christians encountering this serpent cult and declaring dragon, right? So it's an interesting phenomena where history meets myth, where different explanations, different ways of seeing things, different worldviews are clashing. To the Greeks, to these people in Southern Europe, the snake was something of healing, a symbol of healing, of medicine. To the Christians, it was a symbol of the devil, of the demonic, of false prophets, of idols, and had to be eliminated. And by eliminated, I mean evangelized too, right? And the practice stopped. These are missionaries going and converting them. There's no violence on part of Christians. But it is interesting to see these worldviews clash and how the Christians describe the practice. If you haven't seen the video we produced on the history of dragons, I recommend checking that out. In that video, we talk about people's encounters with, dinosaur bones and how they interpreted these as dragons or giants, made the myths more real to them, and also the encounters of Europeans with crocodiles, large man-eating reptiles, and how they were also considered dragons to ancient people, thus making some of these encounters real ones. Thank you all for watching. Our next video is going to be on the Black Death. I know that's been long awaited. It's a complicated subject, so it's taken a while to break down fully. All right, thank you all.